Hey everyone, welcome to Leo the Lefty. This is my first episode of 2024, and it's been a while. The first thing I did for the year was get really, really sick, and I'm just now getting back to where I can think about filming again. I'm sure my voice still sounds like crap, and I'm sorry for that. Bear with me. Am recovering, but still don't feel 100%. So we're going to get through this. Today's episode, I'm going to tell you guys about Medusa. And this was the coloring book I was waiting on. I am using this coloring book here, Greek Mythology. It's okay. You can tell the images are AI. This is the best Medusa they had. They had a few in there, but I don't know. Some of them are not very detailed, or the details kind of peter out at the end. So this is the best I can do for this particular episode. Um, Sorry about that, but we're going to do the best we can. I'm going to tell you guys about Medusa and the unfortunate injustice that was her entire life, basically, and just how unfair her story is. It's intertwined with Perseus, of course, and you'll see later on what I mean by that. Unfortunately, Medusa is seen in a lot of cultures as evil. She wasn't. She wasn't evil. She was the victim of a lot of different men, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it because it's pretty fucked up. So let's get into it, I guess. Enough about me and my horrible cold and all that. It wasn't COVID. I think it was the flu or cold or something, but it was horrible. Anyway, this is the picture I'm going to color for you guys today while I tell you all about her. We'll get into some other Greek myths along the way, but Medusa is my favorite, only because I feel like her story, no matter what version you're told, she always ends up the same, and it's always unfortunate and unfair. And, because of what happened to her, she's been seen in a lot of movies and books and cultures as evil, but she wasn't evil. She was a victim. And that happens often. Sorry, I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit better here so y'all can see this. It'll probably be easier to see once we add some color to it. It kind of all blends together right now. So let's get into it. I'm going to have to decide what color I'm going to do. The weird snakes in her hair and all that. And I say weird not because they're snakes. That's just who Medusa was after she was transformed, but because of the nature of this coloring book. And like I said, a lot of the art seems to be AI because some of the, like, I don't know if you can tell that right here. That's supposed to be a snake head, I think, but it doesn't really look like one. AI is trying, I guess, so we'll see what we can do about it. Alright, so let's get into it and let me figure out a color for her right now. We're going to start off with her face, and I think I'm going to use my pastels for her face. And I'm going to color her kind of a purplish color. Oh, well, I'm sure y'all can hear my pug making her classic pug noises there in the background, as usual. Okay, so Medusa was actually a priestess at the temple of Athena. Athena was the goddess of war and wisdom. Medusa was a very beautiful young woman, and she was one of the virgin priestesses in the temple. And one day she is out collecting water when who should see her but Poseidon, the god of the sea. And if you know anything about the Greek gods, you know that they were unapologetic rapists. I mean, they basically had, I'm not even going to say sex, they forced themselves upon any mortal woman that they wanted. And, in other myths, you'll hear about how, they always had children by these gods, whether they wanted to or not. And that was just something that I guess the mythology at the time was really, really into. Like, hey, there's a mortal human woman. I want to have my way with her, and therefore I will. And they did. And it wasn't sex, it was rape. So Medusa's out collecting water when Poseidon sees her, and he sees she's very, very beautiful, and he decides he wants her. So he pursues her. Medusa, being a virgin priestess who is supposed to remain a virgin, runs back to the temple, hoping for protection, but Poseidon catches her there and rapes her inside of Athena's temple. And Athena is pissed about this. Is she pissed at Poseidon? No. She's pissed at Medusa. They sure do love their victim blaming in these myths, too. It's, as long as the victim is a woman, she is to blame. So she is raped in the temple, and Athena is really, really upset about this because her temple has been defiled. And so she transforms Medusa into what is called a gorgon. And this is how Medusa acquires the snakes in her hair and the gaze that will turn any man to stone, which honestly, like, I wish I had that power. That'd be pretty badass. But poor Medusa is then exiled and spends the rest of her life being pursued by men that want to kill her, which is just pretty fucked up and unfair, but this is the way the myth goes. So as she is now no longer welcome in Athena's temple and turned into a horrible monster, she goes to live on an island. I will look up the name of that here in just a second. It's in my notes. I just don't want to take my eyes off of what I'm doing here at the moment. Alright. I'm sorry. I'm still not feeling great, so I'm still not on top of my game here. So, she's living on this island with her two other sisters. For some reason, they are like demigods, but Medusa is the only mortal. That's never really explained. In Greek mythology, there are many different versions of every myth, but I'm telling you, one of the more common versions of Medusa, just because I'm trying to get through this, they all have about the same storyline. In some of them, she is a willing participant with Poseidon, but based on the track record of the male gods in Greek mythology, I'm gonna say that she probably was not a willing participant in her own rape, as she was a priestess and meant to stay a virgin. She knew this, and she wouldn't have wanted to anger her goddess Athena by, engaging in a relationship with Poseidon. But another thing that Greek mythology tells us is the gods don't care what women want. If they want to take them and rape them, they can and they will and they do. So I'm going to just leave that there. I'm coloring her purple just because I want her to kind of, pop off the page a little bit. I mean, in many of the myths, she's said to have like a gray or green or blue skin tone, whatever, what have you. So I'm going to kind of go over this with a different shade of blue as well, just to kind of color it in there and give her that mystical coloring that she is famed for after she's transformed into the Gorgon. Um, so after this happens to her, she becomes, somewhat famous in lore for turning men to stone with a look. And I think this is where the origins of her being evil comes in, because these poor innocent men, all they wanted to do was murder her, and she turned them to stone. How messed up is that? Like, they just wanted to kill her for the glory of it, and she has the nerve to be resistant against that, having been raped, banished from her temple, and turned into a monster. She has the audacity to not want to be murdered by other men, and yet they still pursue her quite often. And her little island, um, where she is been banished, is littered with the stone remains of all the men who've tried to kill her before. And there's really not a whole lot in the myth about Medusa up to this point, other than what happened to her and, why she's there. So it kind of, it seems like she is mortal, but she does live a super long time. And so she is then living on this island for, I don't know, a century or two. It depends on which version of the myth you're listening to. But she is basically just chilling there with her sisters, probably trying to find some semblance of normalcy and everything. And then she is again pursued by men who would have her head as a trophy, which is extremely fucked up. So, she's just there doing her thing. Men show up to kill her. They fail. They are turned to stone by her gaze, and there's these, dude statues all over her island from the past men who have tried and failed to kill the monster. Which, if they had just left her the hell alone, that wouldn't have happened. But it's impossible. We can't leave women alone. Oh God, no. We have to go after them. So that's the result of that. And she is probably not even a little bit sad about turning these men to stone after a while. Like, I'm sure she gets real tired of their shit on a regular basis, coming to prove themselves by using her as a means to do that. I'm sure she was quite sick of it. So, poor Medusa is chilling on this island with her sisters, just trying to, do her own thing and make the best of her incredibly shitty situation. Thank you, Athena. And, probably Athena couldn't have punished Poseidon, even if she'd wanted to, which I don't think she did. But she certainly didn't have to punish Medusa. She did it because, she was pissed that her precious temple was defiled. And had she really, I don't know, I feel like if she had really cared that much about it, she would have, sought some kind of justice from Poseidon, but she didn't. And Poseidon didn't give a shit, he got what he wanted, and he left, and that was that. So, poor Medusa is the one left to pay for the injustice that happened to her, and it's gonna be a long drawn out process of her having to deal with all these men showing up wanting to cut her head off, to prove themselves. uh, I don't know why that became the standard of manhood back then, but that's what the legends tell us. So she's just chilling, doing her thing. And minding her own business, not really trying to hurt anyone. She's not actively out there seeking to harm anyone. Everybody that is harmed by Medusa is harmed because they came after her. She's not wandering around uh, turning poor little innocent men to stone. No. These men are pursuing her and just not knowing what they're doing and being too egotistical and full of themselves, and then surprise, they get turned into stone. Because they all think they're going to be the ones to cut her head off and prove themselves and get all the glory about how awesome they are that they cut an innocent woman's head off. Huzzah. So, as I said earlier, her story is forever intertwined with Perseus. Who's Perseus? Well, he was a dude in Greek mythology who is the one that will eventually kill Medusa, unfortunately. Alright, so we'll get into Perseus. He is the son of Zeus and the mortal Danae, half brother and great grandfather to Hercules. There is a lot of weird incest and family links in Greek mythology that can become quite confusing. Because the gods are immortal and live forever, so they're constantly boning and raping and all that. They've got a thing for mortal women. They really love to just come down from Olympus and impregnate the shit out of mortal women. And this is how Perseus is born. In some legends, his mother is, enamored with Zeus, and in some, she's also raped. So, take that for what it is. Zeus was just as bad as Poseidon when it came to forcing himself on mortal women. Just imagine, like, you're down there minding your own damn business, and then Zeus sees you, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna get me some of that. And whether, you want to give it to him or not, he's gonna take it. And does he come down in the form of a man? Not always. Not always. So, Danae was the daughter of a king, King Acrisius of Argos, who was told by the Oracle of Delphi that his grandson would kill him one day, prophesies that. And so he is very upset by this, and he decides the solution is to lock his daughter in a tower. And that's what he does. He locks his daughter in a tower and thinks that he has solved his problem. Because if she can't get married or get pregnant, then this grandson the prophecies speak of will never be able to be born, and therefore, boom, prophecy avoided, he's going to be alright. Or so he thinks. But Zeus has other plans, because Zeus, again, another Greek god seeing a mortal woman and just being like, yep, that's mine. So he sees Danae in this tower and decides, of course, that he wants her. And so he comes to her as a golden shower. Yep, you heard that right. A golden shower. Like, I don't think we're talking about urine here, thank God. I think it's literally like flecks of gold that rain over her. Sometimes Zeus will take on the form of a bull or a swan. For whatever reason this time, maybe it was easier to get into the tower as gold flakes or whatever. But this is how he appears to Danae, and he, has sex with her or rapes her, depending on the version you're um, being told, reading, listening to, whatever. And she becomes pregnant with Perseus. And her father, King Acrisius, is, of course, he's pissed. And, a scared little bitch. So what does he do? He puts his daughter and his grandson in a wooden box and throws them into the sea. Like, he doesn't want to outright anger the gods and kill the boy himself. So he thinks this is a solution. Like, technically they were alive when I put them in the box, put them in the sea. He expects them to drown or whatever. But they don't. Um, he, you know, thinks that he solved his problem by doing this, and of course he hasn't. And Danae, who is in the box with her son, is praying for safety, and her prayers are answered when the box washes up on the island of Seriphos, where they were taken in by a fisherman named Dictys. Dictys was a kind man, and he took them in and helped to, you know, raise the boy and take care of Danae and everything. He's one of the few men in Greek mythology who isn't a total piece of shit rapist asshole. So, good for Dictys, you know. There we go. I'm going to color this in. So Perseus is there on Seriphos, and he's growing up and, becoming a man. And the king of the island of Seriphos is Polydectes. Yes, excuse my pronunciation. Some of these are kind of easy, some of them are kind of difficult. I don't speak Greek, so I'm doing the best I can with my clumsy American tongue. Anyway, Polydictus is, he is a dickhead and a rapist and all of that. And he becomes infatuated with Danae. And by this time, which I don't know what took so long, but by this time, Perseus is basically grown. And he does not want this king anywhere near his mother. Which, I guess I can understand that, because it seems like most of the men in Greek times were, scary rapists. So, he doesn't want his mother anywhere near this guy. He's no good. And, there's not much he can do, though. If the king wants her, he will have her. So, he's trying to figure out a way that he doesn't have to, let his mother be taken in by this guy. And, I think that Polydictus kind of knew what was up. And he also knew, which I don't know how he knew, but everybody sort of knew that Perseus's father was Zeus. So he pretends like he's going to marry another woman. And he invites everyone in Seriphos to come to his, I guess, wedding. But it's not really a wedding, it's a banquet that he holds. And he wants a horse from every one of his subjects. And Perseus is, a poor young man with no, property, estate, or means to himself, so he doesn't have a horse to give to Polydectus. And, which Polydectus knows this. He knows that Perseus has nothing to offer him. And that's sort of the plan. Because since, it's kind of humiliating for Perseus not to be able to have the gift the king requests. And so he tells him, tell me what you want, anything in the world, and I'll go get it for you. Which it's like, I guess, it's like you tell him you'll get him anything he wants. Well, he wanted a damn horse and you didn't have that, so how are you going to get something else? But anyway, that's how the myth goes. And, that's how it leads to this point. When Polydectes basically gives Perseus what he thinks is an impossible task. And at the very least, it's a task that is going to force him out of the kingdom for quite some time. And he asked that he could have the head of Medusa. And so Perseus is like, yeah, sure, no problem, I'll go get that for you. And which to me, I'm just like, that, what? But okay, fellas, that's where we're going with this. Okay, let me color this in, and then I'll. But Perseus is like, well, so where is Medusa? And people are like, oh no, man, you're gonna have to go on like this damn quest to find her. Sorry, my phone is exploding, as it always does every time I try to film a goddamn video. Alright. Oh, jeez. No rest for the wicked, y'all. I swear, I can't. I've already been to work today, but there's my phone telling me more work stuff is happening. Okay. Yeah, there we go. See, that's doing okay. Let me show y'all what I've got so far. Here. Not too bad. She's pretty. Okay, so quest. Perseus is, on this quest now to go find the head of Medusa. He prays to his daddy Zeus, and Zeus sends Athena and Hermes to bless their half-brother and give him weapons. He receives the winged sandals, a harp, the helm of darkness, Athena's polished shield, and a cabysus, which is a knapsack to hold her head. And then he is told to seek out the Grey Eye, which is 3 swan-shaped witches who shared an eye and told him, or gonna be able to tell him where to find Medusa. Yeah, I know, it's very weird. So this is what he does, and, he has to go find out where the Grey Eye are, and that's like a whole other quest, I guess, for him. Okay, I'm gonna go through here and just sort of do the tendrils of her hair in this turquoise color, just because I think it pops. I like it. See, I'm actually trying to make her very pretty, because Medusa was said to be very, very beautiful before she was transformed into the Gorgon, which is why Poseidon had to get all rapey and gross, Anyway. Yeah, there we go. I may do some other streaks of color in here too, just to give it some definition. That's one thing I like about the pastels is, you can kind of just fill the color in And then once you go back through and smudge it in later, it looks a lot better. You don't have to be so careful with lines and whatnot. So Perseus is on this quest, and he's going all over looking for the gray eye so that they can tell him where to find Medusa. And he does eventually find them. And they, at first, when he does find them, they don't want to tell him anything. But Perseus is the son of a god, and he's kind of a little shithead. And because they won't tell him, he steals their eye. Now, they have this one eye that they share between them. If you've ever seen the Disney Hercules movie, they kind of go show the gray eye, which they're not swan-shaped. They're just, normal looking, like, old lady witches types in the cartoon or whatever. And, Disney is not the best field of reference because they sugarcoat everything. Because if people actually knew the real myth, they'd probably be quite disturbed that their children were watching such a thing. Let me go in here and give her some more definition with this coloring. So he takes their eye, and he's basically telling them they're not going to get it back until they tell him where Medusa is located. And so eventually they relent, and they do tell him, and she is located on the island of Serpedon. And like I said earlier, Serpedon, she's lived here for a couple of centuries by now. It doesn't really give you an exact time length because, again, this is mythology. Nothing is ever, excuse the pun, written in stone. So he's like, all right, I now know where she's at, so I'm going to go to Serpedon and kill Medusa. And, many have tried before and many have failed, which is why whenever he arrives, he sees the scattered remains of the stone men who have all tried before him to kill Medusa for their own vain glory, which is very sad and very messed up, but this is where we are. Of course, they didn't have the help of all the weapons and gear that Athena and Hermes sent with Perseus. And, if you read into these myths, his voyage takes a very long time. Like, in some cases, it seems like it's more than 10 years for this all to happen. So, who can say? But he is helped out by his siblings who are gods, which, since his father is a god and his mother is immortal, he's a demigod. Which was, oh, so impressive. Okay, let's do some smudging. It's about time for me to wash this handkerchief or get a different one. So when he arrives at Serpedon, again, like I said, he sees all the stone remains of the men who have tried previously to, kill the Gorgon and capture her head like it's some sort of damn trophy. And since they didn't have the benefit of, you know, the sandals and the helmet and the shield and all of that, they were easily, you know, turned to stone and just lay there, uh, like the stone losers they are. Which I'm sure Medusa was just like so tired of that. Like, you know, just always being pursued for whatever reason because, you know, suddenly killing her and taking her head became like this, you know, quest for glory for a lot of them, which I'm sure for her, who's just trying to like mind her own business and live her life, I'm sure that was annoying as hell. But they don't care. Of course not. Let's throw some red in here because I feel like we're getting all the cool tones, but we need some warmer tones here. I'm gonna... There's... And I don't know if it's the AI or what, but some of these kind of look like almost tree branches, which, I mean, I could do brown, but I want to give it a little bit of pop of color, so I'm gonna be like the like the Greeks, where in my version I will do whatever I want. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. So Perseus is sneaking around the island looking for Medusa, and he eventually finds her in a cave asleep. Yes, you heard that correctly. She is sleeping, minding her own business, not hurting anybody, not attempting to hurt anyone, but he is going to use the shield, which has been like highly polished to like a mirror sheen, to um, you know, approach her, and he's going to succeed where nobody else could, and he's going to cut her head off. Poor Medusa. And he puts her head in the knapsack because even though her head is cut off, it is still very dangerous and still has the ability to turn people to stone. Now, here's something very weird. When her head is cut off, Pegasus is born from her neck stump, but not just Pegasus. Another one called Craysor are born from her neck stump. So Pegasus and his brother Craysor are born from her neck stump when her head is cut off. And this is kind of in all of the versions. Now, in some of the versions, Craysor is like a man, and in some he is a boar, like a boar with wings. And in the versions where he's a man, he becomes a king on the Iberian Peninsula, which we know is Spain now. So those two kind of diverge into some weird areas as well. But Pegasus is always Pegasus, which is just a winged horse. And, you know, Pegasus, there's not plural of them. Like, Pegasus is the one and only winged horse. And I'm going to tell y'all a little bit about his story in a minute, but we'll finish up with Perseus and Medusa first. So, as he is, you know, victorious in taking her head, he, you know, goes to head back home so that he can give Polydictus her head and, you know, fulfill his mission. But, you know, he's got to get back home, which is another basically a quest and a voyage of its own. Let me finish smearing and smooshing this. Okay, I want to add a little bit of red in here too, just because I need to break up that turquoise a little bit. Oops. Boop, 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 boop. Alright, let's blend that in. See, I like the way that looks. That's very pretty. Oh, Medusa, you're so pretty. Here, let's give her this golden crown here. What we're gonna do. Alright, so, Perseus has, mission accomplished. He's got her head and he's on his way back. And at some point on his way, he is going to have sort of another little adventure that's going to happen. Let's give her a little bit of red in her lips here, because I feel like they need to be a little more defined. There we go. I'm going to blend that carefully. There you go. Yeah, she's turning out pretty. Alright, so for whatever reason, Perseus goes to see King Atlas, who refused him hospitality. Depending on what version you're listening to, we never know why. He refuses him. We don't even know why he goes to see him. We just know that this is part of the story. And so, what does he do? He uses Medusa's head to turn Atlas to stone. This is going to be a theme for Perseus. He's going to abuse that power quite a bit before he actually hands the head off. Oh, you know what? I feel like we should just color that in purple right there too. I think that's her arm. It's so hard to tell with this crappy AI. There. Alright. So, he then travels to Ethiopia, which is a mythical Ethiopia ruled by King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. Now, Cassiopeia boasted that her daughter Andromeda's beauty was equal to that of Nereid's. And that pissed Poseidon off for whatever reason, and he sent an inundation on the land. A sea serpent named Cetus that killed men and beasts. And the Oracle of Ammon, for whatever reason, because this is just how problems were solved back then, said that the only way to defeat the sea serpent was to tie his daughter naked to a stone and sacrifice her to the sea beast. And he's like, what? No way, I could never do that. Just kidding. He's like, yeah, cool, totally, I'll sacrifice my daughter. No biggie. And so that's what they do. They tie their naked daughter to a rock and are basically going to sacrifice her to this sea beast when Perseus comes along, and he's like, oh no, this beautiful naked girl, I should rescue her. And he does, and he uses Medusa's head to turn the snake into stone. And you would think that people would be like, hey, cool, like, we didn't even have to kill this poor innocent girl. or let her die to solve this problem. But they were, no, they were pissed. They were like, hey, she was totally supposed to die. And so, um, that's kind of just where that goes. And in some versions, the harp that he is given is used actually to kill the snake. Sometimes it's a sword. I mean, it just really, God, it varies from version to version what he uses to kill the sea serpent. Um, and it doesn't really matter. But what becomes of this little side quest is that he ends up marrying Andromeda. And so now he's got himself a wife that he promptly abandons to continue on his quest. And, I mean, in some versions she's pregnant, and some she's not. Some she's not mentioned again. Some it comes up later where he'll return to her in about 10 years or so. So, again, just depends on what version you're hearing it from, because it's kind of all over the place at this point. I'm going to add some of this blue up in here. I like to give it a little extra oomph and depth and color. Oh, Medusa, you're turning out so lovely. You're so pretty. Okay. I think I'm going to go back in. What should I use in this red to kind of break that up a little bit? Maybe this one. Oh, God, come on. Alright. Let me turn my page here. In one of the versions, Andromeda had already been previously promised to Phineus, and he's kind of pissed. I guess he was fine with her being sacrificed, but now that that's not going to happen, he wants to marry her, and him and Perseus squabble over it a little bit. And so what does Perseus do? He uses Medusa's head to turn Phineus to stone. That's kind of like his go-to thing now. He's just like, alright, well, whatever. If you don't agree with me, I'm going to turn your ass to stone. So that's what he does. I don't think anybody ever bothered asking Andromeda who she would want to marry. Because, why would you? Who cares what her opinion is? It's only her life and the man she'll be tied to forever. She shouldn't have an opinion on it. But of course, back then in marriages, women weren't expected to have an opinion on who they were marrying. They were just expected to do it. It was their duty. Ugh, the patriarchy. Anyway, so that's a little side story that sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't. Okay, I'm going to go in. This one, I give this a red, some different depth here. And we will a blendy blend. Alright, and so, like, one of the ways Perseus is getting around is he's using these sandals with wings on them to flutter around, which must have been so adorable. He's just zipping around, turning folks to stone, being a, spoiled little shithead. And he finally returns home. When he does, he finds that his mother is hiding from Polydectes, who is still pursuing her. And he had become violent, is what we're told. It doesn't say how, but it doesn't seem that far off from the typical. Like, that's something that's actually quite believable. And Perseus is pissed, which, thankfully, at least he cared about his mom. He didn't really care about many other women, but at least he cared about his mom, which is something, I guess. And so, he, of course, goes to present the head of Medusa to Polydectes, and he uses it to turn him to stone, of course. And so his mother, finally being relieved of the pain in the ass that was Polydectes, decides to marry Dictys. And some fun thing that they never really touch on why, but Dictys, again, was a poor fisherman, but his brother was Polydectes, who was the king. So no mention as to why he was poor and his brother was king, but that's the way it goes. And his mother had fallen in love with Dictys, which I don't understand why it took so long and why they weren't married years and years and years prior. But anyway, so she marries Dictys and lives happily ever after, all because of her wonderful son Perseus saves the day by murdering Medusa and taking her head. And I guess he likes Dictys, so he's cool with this marriage. And happy for his mom, I guess. Now, I'm going to use a little bit of gray to go back over her skin here. I'm going to turn her like this so it's easier. Yeah, there we go. We'll kind of we'll blend that here in a minute. And so now that Perseus has completed his mission, he returns the harp and the shield and the shoes and all of that back to Athena and Hermes. And he gives Athena, that bitch, the head of Medusa, and Athena affixes the head of Medusa to her shield, which she then carries into battle. So, literally, poor Medusa is never able to really be laid to rest or whatever, because her head then becomes, part of Athena's war decoration, which, Athena being the one who made her that way. So I think that's pretty shitty and very injustice-like, but that's the way the cookie crumbles in Greek mythology. So we're going to talk about Pegasus for a minute. We're done with Perseus and Medusa for the moment. So depending on who's telling it, either Athena or Poseidon help Bellerophon capture Pegasus. Bellerophon, we'll get into that in another episode later on, just another mythological dude. And Bellerophon tames him and rides him into the battle with the Chimera. And then in some stories they say he and Bellerophon were killed trying to reach Mount Olympus, and Pegasus was then made into a constellation to serve Zeus. Or Zeus chose Pegasus to carry his lightning bolts, and after many years of faithful service, Zeus made him into a constellation. It's kind of just, again, whatever version you're listening to. So there's a mountain called Hippocrene on Mount Helicon that was said to have been created when Pegasus's hoof struck a rock on the mountain, which that's just like a natural landmark that was explained away by Pegasus clipping his hoof, and it made this indentation, and it's still there today. That's all. So, Chrysaor, again, like I said, in some versions he is a boar who is um, also a winged fella flying around, zippity doo dah. And in some, he is a man. In the versions where he is a man, he is becomes a king on the Iberian Peninsula, and is said to be very influential, very powerful, very well loved and liked, and all of that. And in some versions, he is the boar and a great warrior who helps fight in all the various wars that the gods are always fighting each other over, because the gods are constantly fighting each other. Um, and always coming up with some shit that humans get in the middle of and have to pay for because, you know, they can't be bothered to leave the humans out of it. Okay. So that's kind of the gist of the Medusa myth and legend. She is forever intertwined with Perseus, of course, because that's who murders her. And unfortunately for poor Medusa, you know, her tale gets twisted where she's a willing participant in her own demise. It gets twisted to where she's evil and all of that, but I don't think she was. I think she was the victim of, you know, male ego over and over again, because they tend to take what they want and do what they want, and then I guess because she wasn't grateful for it, she must have had to pay. And she is ever pursued by men trying to take her head, and she is called a monster, she is called a beast, she is called evil, and she was none of those things. Medusa tragically was a victim of men, a victim of other women, and I think she just gets a bad rep, and she deserves better. I really do think that somebody someday should make a movie just about her and portray her as not a bad guy. I just don't think she was a bad guy. Or girl, whatever you want to call her. Because she was a young virgin girl when she was violated by Poseidon. Of course, she was sent to her exile, and she lived there for centuries. Even though she wasn't immortal, she lived a very long time, but she could be killed, so therefore she's not immortal. So, this is my Medusa. I think she came out very pretty. Alright, well, I've got some more cases coming up here in the next couple of weeks now that I'm over being mostly sick. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, or if you have any qualms and you want to discuss them, leave me a comment. If you did enjoy this, give me a like. I would love a subscribe. I appreciate anything y'all want to throw my way. And probably with my next case or two, I'll be doing my own artwork. I just really wanted to do a picture of Medusa while I told y'all about her tale. I think that it's very interesting, and I'll be doing more Greek mythology along the way and all that, but I'm trying to do a variety of topics and things so that, you know, you can kind of do a little bit of everything. But this week is, you know, mythology, and I'll get back to it. There are some other incredible myths. Oh, I almost forgot. And I'll mark it in my sources in the description. But one of the best sources that I had, and it's a great way to listen to mythology, is there's a podcast called Let's Talk About Myths, Baby. And the host, Liv, she's wonderful. She is very knowledgeable in Greek mythology, and she tells each episode is a different Greek myth that she goes through and kind of talks about and breaks down and everything. I think she's fantastic. I love the podcast. I became a fan once I discovered it, and even for just for fun, I've been listening to it and everything. I did use her sort of as a source for some of this, but just in general, it's a great podcast, especially if you just want to like hear the myths. She lays them all out for you. She's got a great storytelling capability, and she really does justice to the women characters in the stories, I feel like. And it's just an all around awesome podcast, and I can't recommend it enough. So if you want to hear more, go listen to Liv at Let's Talk About Myths, Baby. She is just fantastic, and give her a 5-star review. On Apple or Audible or Spotify, whatever you're listening to her on. She's amazing, and she definitely deserves a round of applause and lots of credit. And I just wanted to shout her out. Hey, Liv. I don't know her, never met her, but I've stumbled upon her podcast while I was doing my research, and I just immediately fell in love with it. It's just a fantastic podcast. So check her out. And I guess that's it, you guys. I'll see you next time. And until then, everybody try to stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you later. Bye.